My mother-in-law poured something strange into my drink when she thought I wasn't looking. "A special cocktail for my favorite son-in-law," she said with a gentle smile, full of hidden meaning. I smiled and thanked her, then quietly swapped glasses with her husband, who constantly criticized my work. 15 minutes later. "My name is Julia Mercer, 32 years old, a freelance photographer living in Asheville, North Carolina. I built my career from scratch, shooting weddings, wildlife, and magazine spread jobs that don't come with flashy accolades, but are enough to pay the bills if you're good. And I am. But to my in-laws, especially Diane, what I did was never enough. How's that little photography hobby of yours?" Gerald, my father-in-law, would ask at family dinners, never hiding his disdain. He was an investment banker, the type of man who measured success by square footage and stock options. Every Sunday dinner at their house was the same. Diane would fuss over her daughter, while Gerald interrogated me about my finances. My wife, Haley, would squeeze my hand under the table, a silent apology from her for her parents. I had just wrapped up a wildlife photography assignment in Montana, trudging through knee-deep snow to photograph bison for National Geographic. I was exhausted, but Haley insisted we couldn't miss her mother's birthday dinner. "Just a couple of hours," she promised. I should have listened to the uneasy feeling in my stomach when Diane cornered me in the kitchen. Her eyes darted around before she handed me the drink, her fingers trembling slightly as she said, "I made it special, just for you." Something wasn't right. I couldn't pinpoint it, but I could feel the difference. Haley and I met 6 years ago at an art exhibition where my work was featured. She was finishing her master's in environmental science, and I was just beginning to make a name for myself. We connected immediately. She understood my need to capture the world through a lens, and I admired her passion for protecting it. Her parents, however, were another story. From the very first meeting, Gerald made it clear that he expected someone different for his daughter, someone with an office job, a retirement plan, a company car, someone just like him. Diane was subtler. She'd compliment my photos while asking when I planned to settle into something stable. She'd invite me to family functions, then introduce me as the photographer instead of her son-in-law. For years, I tried to win them over. I brought expensive wine to dinner, showed them published work, mentioned high-profile clients. Nothing changed their perception that I was just a phase their daughter would eventually outgrow, a phase she would leave behind. Last Christmas, I overheard Diane on the phone. Haley could have married Thomas, orthopedic surgeon, family money. But she chose this creative guy. The way she paused before creative made it sound like a disease. Gerald was more direct. When Haley and I announced we were trying for a baby, he pulled me aside. "Kids are expensive, son. Maybe think about real employment before bringing one into this world." I never told Haley these things. She loved her parents despite their flaws, and I didn't want to force her to choose sides. So I smiled, shook Gerald's hand at every visit, complimented Diane's cooking, and kept my thoughts to myself. But there were signs I should have paid more attention to. The way Diane always asked Haley to help her in the kitchen whenever I talked about a successful project. The way she would inadvertently exclude me from family photos. Those small gestures I overlooked, but they had left an indelible mark on my heart. The time when Gerald suggested therapy for Haley's impulsive decisions while gazing directly at me. I chose to disregard it all, optimistic that time would eventually lead to acceptance. I was mistaken. I returned from Montana on the Friday of Diane's birthday dinner with a memory card brimming with images that would cover our mortgage for 3 months and raw, wind-burned cheekbones. I was exhausted, but I managed to shower, don a button-down shirt, and transport us to her parents' colonial-style residence in the most expensive neighborhood of the city. Dinner commenced as usual. Gerald boasted about a recent transaction. The table settings were the subject of Diane's attention. Owen, Haley's sibling, and his wife Vanessa engaged in civilized discourse. While nursing a beverage, I monitored the minutes until we could depart. Diane declared that she had prepared her popular sangria for dessert following the main course. She vanished into the kitchen, and I offered to assist in transporting the glassware. That was the moment I observed it. She possessed two spectacles that were distinct from the others. Upon my arrival, she promptly incorporated an item from a small vial into one of them. It was not a garnish or flavor. It was devoid of color and odor. She immediately tucked the vial away upon hearing my footfall. "Julian, I am so sorry," she stated with excessive optimism. "I have this. This one is intended for you. A unique recipe for my most beloved son-in-law." My larynx contracted. The glass was adorned with a scarcely discernible film that caught the light. "I offered to assist you in transporting these, and I accepted both of the glasses she had prepared." Gerald was in the dining room, monitoring his phone with barely a glance up when I approached. "Sangria, gentlemen." I positioned the tampered tumbler in front of him rather than removing it myself. I observed him consume water while offering an explanation that I preferred it with my dessert. Gerald was pale, sweating, and rushing to the restroom 45 minutes later. The home was filled with the violent sounds of his illness. Upon realizing the circumstances, Diane's complexion became devoid of color. I was aware of two things with absolute certainty at that instant, as her eyes met mine across the table. My mother-in-law had attempted to poison me, and she was aware that I was aware. I did not respond or engage in a confrontation with her. While Haley hurried to check on her father, I consumed my chocolate cake. Gerald insisted that it was food poisoning, while Diane stammered about bad shellfish in the pandemonium that ensued. I discreetly pocketed the untouched glass that was intended for me. The wrath I experienced was not hot or explosive. It was premeditated and chilly. Although I was not inclined to abandon the situation, I was also not inclined to resist their demands. I intended to force them to confront their true selves. I delivered the glass to Jason, a former client who operated a toxicology laboratory, on the Monday following the dinner. When I articulated my requirements, he inquired whether they were personal or professional. "It was a family matter," I replied. He contacted me 3 days later. Unfortunately, that beverage contained benzodiazepines, Julian. Nothing fatal, but sufficient to induce a state of unconsciousness for several hours and potentially induce memory loss. "What is the source of this?" I expressed my gratitude and requested a written report. I refrained from responding to his inquiry. On that evening, I informed Haley that I intended to forego Sunday supper in order to concentrate on an upcoming exhibition. She was disappointed, but she comprehended the situation. I refrained from informing her of the test results. Not yet. Initially, I required additional information. In the subsequent 2 weeks, I conducted certain investigations. Diane received prescriptions for Xanax from 3 distinct physicians. For years, she had been increasing her dosages by 2- and 3-fold. She was also the subject of rumors in the town, peculiar behavior at a neighbor's party, and accusations of stealing jewelry at her country club. Her family had worked diligently to dispel these stories. I organized all of the information and awaited my opportunity. It came about when Haley mentioned that her mother required photographs for a social media profile. Haley was taken aback by the request, as she expressly inquired as to whether you would be willing to accept them. I concurred. On the Saturday following, I arrived at their residence unaccompanied, holding a sealed envelope in one hand and a camera bag in the other. Diane was anticipating her arrival, her cosmetics flawless and her attire extravagant. She clarified that Gerald was present at the office. I discreetly stated, "I thought you might be interested in seeing this before we begin." I presented her with the envelope that contained the toxicology report, as well as printouts of her numerous prescriptions. As she read, her hands shivered. She murmured, "This is absurd. I would never do so. We are both aware of the incident." I interrupted her. "The reason for this is unknown to me." Her visage became inflexible. "You are inadequate for my daughter. You will never be. Security should be the responsibility of a male, not the taking of photographs. And does the act of drugging your daughter's spouse offer security?" I maintained a consistent volume to my voice. She abruptly stated, "It was not going to cause you any harm, make you feel ill, force you to forego the absurd gallery opening that you have been discussing for months. Prove to Haley that you are unreliable." I allowed the information to fully penetrate my mind. Finally, I stated, "This is what transpires next. Gerald will be informed of your actions. Next, you will both begin to treat me with respect. Not because you have altered your opinion of me, but because the alternative is Haley discovering her parents' identities." Diane laughed, but the sound was lifeless. "She will never trust you in comparison to us." I retrieved my camera case. "Possibly not. However, she will accept the prescription records, the lab report, and the neighbors you have alienated. Could you risk your relationship with your daughter on that?" I departed without capturing a single photograph. Diane called Haley that evening in sobs, alleging that I had acted inappropriately during our session, said that I had been hostile and menacing. I was unable to conceal the truth when Haley confronted me. I presented her with all relevant information, including the lab report, prescriptions, and even text messages from her mother that had become increasingly hostile over the years. She continued to assert that my mother would not engage in this activity. However, her tone was lacking in conviction. She confronted her parents the following day. Though I was not present, her eyes were red from weeping when she returned home. She whispered, "My father claims that it is all a misunderstanding, that you are attempting to create a rift between us due to your insecurity regarding your professional trajectory." I simply nodded. I had anticipated this outcome. "What are your thoughts?" I inquired. She did not respond. Rather, she retreated to her bed and turned her back to me. I had attempted to resist, but I had accidentally sunk deeper into their snare. I was now the antagonist in their narrative, and they had successfully instilled doubt in the individual whose opinion was of the utmost importance to me. Haley did not communicate with me for a period of 2 weeks. Unaccompanied, she visited her parents' residence and returned with fresh uncertainties and red eyes. I dedicated myself to my work, spending extended periods of time in my studio, anticipating the storm's departure. Afterward, a parcel was delivered to me. There was no return address. Only my name was inscribed in an unfamiliar handwriting across the top. A USB drive and a note were contained within. I recommend that you observe this. Double quote. Owen's spouse, Vanessa. The drive contained video files and home security footage from Gerald and Diane's residence. The timestamps indicated the evening of the supper. Clearly, Diane was in the kitchen, adding an ingredient to a beverage. The spectacles were taken by me as I entered. Gerald was observed imbibing from the tampered glass. However, there was more. Diane is seen shrieking at Gerald in the footage that was captured after we had departed, accusing him of drinking from the incorrect glass. Gerald responded by shouting, "This is not the first time you have engaged in such behavior." I viewed the footage 3 times in an effort to comprehend the information that was presented to me. Not only affirmation of Diane's actions, but also evidence of a pattern. Evidence that Gerald was aware. The subsequent file was created 2 days subsequent to the dinner. Diane and Gerald engaged in a heated argument in their living room regarding me. Gerald stated, "He is aware of your actions." "So what?" Diane responded, "He is the one who is at odds with my assertion. Haley will never prioritize him over her family. And in the event that she does," Diane responded with a frigid tone, "then she is not the daughter I raised. Do not be concerned. Planting seedlings, I have already initiated conversations with her regarding their marital difficulties. She will be petitioning for divorce and believing that it was her idea by the time I finish." I closed my laptop with trembling palms. This was not solely about me. This was a deliberate endeavor to regulate Haley's life and to exclude her from individuals who did not align with their vision. Additionally, they had been engaging in this activity for an extended period of time. I promptly contacted Vanessa. "What was the reason for sending this to me?" She said quietly, "Because they did the same thing to me when I married Owen. They attempted to separate us for 2 years, asserting that I was not good enough. It was nearly successful. What was the reason for your failure to inform us?" She acknowledged that Owen is unaware. He reveres his father and accepts his every word. I've attempted to inform him, but he believes that I am overly apprehensive. I was unable to observe them inflict this on another individual. Gerald sent me a text message the following day. We ought to engage in conversation. No spouses, only men to men. I encountered him at his country club. A private chamber was where he was waiting, sipping on bourbon. Julian, he initiated. Families are intricate. My wife is capable of being difficult and protective, but she is well-intentioned. I inquired whether the drugging of an individual was intended to be beneficial. He dismissed the situation by waving his hand. A misinterpretation. Diane is prescribed medication to alleviate her anxiety. It is probable that she jumbled up the glasses. Gerald, I possess the security footage. The expression on his face was instantaneously transformed into a frigid and calculating expression. What is it that you are seeking? Is there money? Is that the subject of this discussion? I was always aware that you married Haley for pecuniary reasons. I merely stated, I would like you both to leave us alone. Please refrain from attempting to persuade Haley that I am less than satisfactory. Please refrain from interfering with our matrimony. Gerald leaned forward. Do you believe that this is the first time we have encountered an individual such as yourself? Who are the individuals who wish to exploit our family? He chuckled. Haley will return to her rightful place, as she consistently does. Ask her about Thomas. Prior to your arrival, inquire about her fiancé. I experienced a chill. What is the subject of your conversation? Haley was engaged prior to her encounter with you. A gentleman, the physician. His background was not to our liking. It required 6 months to persuade her that he was not the right choice for her. Breaking it off was her decision. I arrived home in tears and embraced my father. He grinned. Son, history is a repeating pattern. I reached out to Bethany, Haley's college companion, during the journey home. Asked her about Thomas. She exclaimed, "Oh my God, that was truly appalling." Her parents convinced her that he was infidelity, despite the fact that he was ideal for her. Planted evidence. He endeavored to inform her of the truth. However, she had lost faith in him by that time. The pattern was now evident. This was not solely about me. It was a matter of control. Their daughter's existence is entirely under their control. Also, they had previously executed this action. I refrained from confronting Haley immediately. Instead, I initiated the process of collecting all available evidence. Thomas was initially hesitant to engage in conversation with me when I contacted him. He sent me old emails between him and Haley, which demonstrated how her parents had systematically undermined their relationship after I explained the situation. I reached out to other ex-boyfriends, as well as former friends of Haley who had mysteriously disassociated themselves. A pattern was discerned. Individuals who promoted Haley's autonomy were gradually excluded from her existence. Diane and Gerald discussed their intentions for us in additional security footage that Vanessa provided. Gerald stated in a single recording that we would persuade her to return to her hometown after their divorce. She is capable of overseeing the foundation. Connect with eligible males. I consolidated all of the information onto a single drive. I then extended an invitation to Owen and Vanessa to dine with me, unbeknownst to Haley that I was about to tarnish her family's reputation. I connected my laptop to our TV during dessert. I stated that there is something that both of you must observe. We collectively viewed the footage for the subsequent hour. Haley maintained her composure, her complexion pallid. Owen continued to murmur, "That's not my parents," while shaking his head. Haley turned to me with tears flowing down her face after the event concluded. "What was the reason for your delay in informing me?" I stated this because I required you to observe it for yourself. The entirety of it. Not only what they did to me, but the way they have treated you throughout your life. Owen, incensed, rose from his seat. "This is nonsense. These videos have been edited by you. My parents would not engage in this activity." Vanessa placed her hand on his arm. "Owen, they also did it to us. What is the reason for the abrupt increase in their affection for me following the birth of James? Because they possessed leverage as a result of having a grandchild." Owen's visage was devoid of color. "No, you did not inform me." She murmured, "I made an effort. You would not comply." Later that evening, Haley climbed into bed with me. She spoke gently. "I require time to contemplate this. Nevertheless, I have faith in your abilities." I apologized for my skepticism. Diane contacted me the following morning. Haley activated her speaker. "Darling, I was considering inviting you to remain with us for a while," Diane said with a smile. "Your father and I are concerned about your well-being. Sometimes, separation can provide a sense of clarity, as marriage is a challenging endeavor." Haley interjected, "Mom, the videos have been viewed by me." Silence. Subsequently, which videos? The surveillance footage of your involvement in the drugging of Julian's beverage, regarding your and your father's conspiracy to dissolve my marriage. An additional delay. What he has presented to you, Haley, has been manipulated. Julian has consistently harbored feelings of envy toward our family, as you are aware. Halt! Haley's tone was authoritative. "We are all planning to visit tonight. Owen, Vanessa, Julian, and I. We will discuss this matter as a family. There will be no more deception." Following the conclusion of her conversation, Haley addressed me. "They will refute all allegations. They will attempt to reverse the situation." I nodded. "I'm aware. Therefore, what is our strategy?" I grinned for the first time in weeks. "I believe it is time for your parents to meet the authentic version of me. The individual who is capable of not only capturing images, but also imparting narratives." We arrived at Gerald and Diane's residence that evening with my camera equipment. In the living room, Owen and Vanessa were already present, seated rigidly. Gerald exuded assurance. "I comprehend that a misunderstanding has occurred. I did not intend to cause any confusion." I interrupted to erect my tripod. "This dialogue is being recorded for the family archives." Diane promptly voiced her objection. "This is a private family enterprise." "Exactly," I concurred. "Even though you have made a concerted effort to alter this, I am a member of the family enterprise." We proceeded to arrange everything for the subsequent 2 hours. The pattern that had influenced Haley and Owen's entire existence, including the drink, the manipulation, Thomas, and the other ex-boyfriends. Gerald and Diane, of course, denied all allegations and referred to me as erratic and manipulative. However, I played an additional recording and displayed an additional email with each denial. Their denials became weaker, and their features became paler. Haley eventually rose from her seat. "I have affection for both of you. Although you are my parents, the actions you have taken are beyond forgiveness. My existence is no longer under your control." Owen acknowledged. "We are responsible adults who determine our own companions and paths." Diane began to weep, not out of contrition, but rather from the realization that she was losing control. Gerald appeared bewildered, as if he was unable to fathom that his children were defying him. Gerald received a USB drive from me as we prepared to depart. This encompasses all relevant information, including the testimonies, the correspondence, and the footage. "It is yours to keep." "What is the intended meaning of that?" he inquired with suspicion. "It implies that I will not jeopardize your reputation by disclosing this information to anyone else. That would cause Haley harm, and I would never do so." I hesitated. "However, copies will be sent to each member of your country club, your business associates, and your cherished social circle if you ever attempt to interfere in our marriage again, manipulate Haley, or speak against me." Gerald gazed at me with a degree of respect that was unprecedented since our initial encounter. "I underestimated your capabilities." "Indeed," I stated it in a straightforward manner. "You succeeded. 6 months have transpired." Haley and Owen initiated therapy to address the harm their parents had inflicted. Diane and Gerald maintained their distance, sending occasional texts while adhering to the boundaries we had established. Subsequently, they extended an invitation to us all to dine during the holidays. The invitation promised a new beginning. Haley expressed a desire to attend. She stated that they are still my parents. Additionally, they are making an effort. I concurred, but I was not so naive as to believe that they had undergone a transformation. Upon our arrival, everything appeared to be in order. A feast had been prepared by Diane. Gerald was endearing, inquiring about my most recent endeavors with what seemed to be a sincere interest. Gerald extended an invitation to me to visit his study following supper. He stated, "I have a proposal for you," as he poured me a whiskey. I have been contemplating your professional trajectory. Photography has been beneficial to you. However, have you given any thought to becoming more diverse? Your employment with my organization is feasible. Track for junior partners. The remuneration would be substantial. I accepted the glass, but I refrained from consuming it. Why would you choose to do that? He said with ease, you are family. Additionally, I admire your approach to the disagreeable situation. While maintaining your position, you safeguarded my daughter. That is the behavior of a genuine individual. I placed the glass on the ground, leaving it unaltered. I am grateful for the invitation. However, I declined. His smile across the room. She could discern that something had transpired from my demeanor. She stood up as a result of my slight assent. She made a distinct announcement, Mom, Dad, I have a matter to discuss with you. Everybody turned to observe her. Julian and I are expecting a child. I am 3 months expectant. Their expressions of surprise were sincere. Diane was the first to recover, and she rushed to embrace her daughter with tears in her eyes. Gerald approached at a slower pace, occasionally gazing between Haley and me. He said with a rigid upper lip, Congratulations. I replied, Thank you, before reducing my voice to ensure that only he could hear. This infant will never be used as a pawn in your games. I assure you of that. He nodded once, but his expression became stern. He comprehended the message. Haley grasped my hand as we drove home that evening. They will never undergo any transformation, will they? I stated the truth, but they will have to acknowledge that we have. Gerald's counsel submitted a certified letter 3 weeks later. A deed to our property, which we had been renting, and legal documents establishing a trust fund for our unborn child were contained within. The transfer of assets was clean and irrevocable, with no conditions, ties, or note. It was not an apology. Gerald was incapable of accomplishing that. However, it was an acknowledgement, potentially the sole one he could provide, that we had prevailed. Our daughter was born during the summer. After my grandmother, we named her Eliza. Diane and Gerald arrived at the hospital with gifts, but they maintained a respectful distance. They cooed over the infant, took photos, and departed without offering any parenting advice or financial lectures. Months have transpired. Eventually, our relationship with them became somewhat consistent. Although they did not offer an apology for their actions, they ceased their efforts to influence Haley's life or undermine my career. Haley entered my studio one evening while I was in the process of retouching photographs. She was carrying Eliza. She informed me that my mother had reached out to me. Her desire is for us to attend Christmas. I raised my head from my computer. What are your aspirations? She responded, I believe we should go, but with certain restrictions. Our lodging is at a hotel, not their residence. Whenever we desire, we depart. No time with Eliza without supervision. I nodded. Sounds plausible. She sat beside me and tenderly bounced the baby. I used to believe that success was defined by satisfying my parents, obtaining their approval, and meeting their expectations. What is the current situation? She gazed downward at our daughter before returning to me. I now understand that it is about making decisions that I can be pleased of and supporting the people I care about. A sizable envelope was delivered by Gerald 2 weeks prior to Christmas. A glossy brochure for his organization's annual report was enclosed. My photographs were used extensively. Architectural photographs, landscapes, and portraits. The labor that I had completed independently, without his involvement. A succinct note was present. Engaged the most exceptional photographer I know. I believe you would appreciate a copy. G is a double quotation. It was not a matter of reconciliation or absolution. It was an entirely different matter. Respect, perhaps. The recognition that I achieved success on my own terms, rather than on his. I did not contact him to express my gratitude. We both comprehended that this was not about gratitude. It was a matter of acknowledging the new boundaries and the new reality. I established my own gallery in downtown Asheville that spring. While I was at the ceremonial opening, Haley stood beside me, holding Eliza on her hip. My parents arrived by air from Oregon. The space was filled with friends and clients who were in awe of the images I had captured over the years. In the latter part of the evening, Gerald and Diane also attended. They did not remain for an extended period. Under the watchful observation of Haley, Diane briefly held Eliza. Gerald shook my hand, nodded at the photographs with authentic approval, and departed without offering any recommendations regarding the operation of my business. Haley inquired, "Do you believe they have undergone any changes?" As we closed up that evening, I thoroughly evaluated the inquiry. I stated, finally, "However, they have conceded that they are unable to alter us. And on occasion, that is sufficient." I came to the realization that I had never truly articulated something before as we sat on our porch, watching the stars emerge over the mountains and Eliza asleep in her crib upstairs. I had failed to triumph in Gerald and Diane's game. By declining to participate in the game, I would have emerged victorious. I had remained steadfast, safeguarded what was important, and constructed my life in accordance with my own definition of success, utilizing honesty and peaceful persistence rather than schemes or manipulation. In the end, that was the most gratifying form of retribution, living in a manner that was consistent with my own desires, surrounded by the family I cherished.